think we've got it all repaired and the bow shoots good.
Well, I tell you what, I like it. I want to make a quiver and bow case for it, maybe out of mountain lion, and then we've got some other bows.
Will's got a few more bows too we can work on, and we get a little spare time.
Once hailed as the last true men of television, grizzled, self-reliant, and armed with axes instead of iPhones, the stars of Mountain Men carved out a niche that felt refreshingly authentic in a world obsessed with selfies and streaming. The show offered viewers an escape to a time when survival wasn't just a lifestyle, it was a necessity. For years, it thrived on that wild backwoods charm, but like many reality giants, it eventually began to fade. So, what happened to this once dominant series? Join us as we tell you why Mountain Men fell off. When Mountain Men first aired in 2012, it felt like a fresh concept. Viewers were hooked on the idea of men who didn't rely on tech or trends, just grit, wilderness skills, and centuries-old tools. But over time, the very authenticity that fueled the show's popularity began to feel suspiciously polished. Fans started noticing patterns. Every dangerous moment arrived right before commercial breaks. Animal attacks always seemed perfectly timed, and the camera angles were too slick for something claiming to be off-grid. Online forums and survivalist communities began dissecting episodes, pointing out continuity errors, questioning the legitimacy of hunts, or wondering why someone supposedly living off the land had brand-name gear. The show's producers were stuck. As they tried to make the show more entertaining for mass audiences, they also made it feel more produced. It was the curse of reality TV. In trying to enhance drama, they diluted authenticity. The line between documentary and performance blurred. It also made the audience suspect that these mountain men weren't as rugged or as off the grid as they claimed. Early seasons of Mountain Men thrived on unpredictability, whether it was Eustace facing off against trespassers, Tom surviving a brutal Montana winter, or Marty flying through the Alaskan wilderness. Each episode felt like a mini survival tale, filled with grit and grit alone. But as seasons rolled on, storylines began to recycle like old campfire tales. The tension stopped feeling organic. Each season brought the same near-identical structure in which winter is coming, food is scarce, an accident threatens survival, and somehow a last-minute save. While repetition is inevitable in a show focused on cyclical wilderness living, Mountain Men struggled to innovate within its own framework. The suspense started to feel staged. Even casual fans could predict the twist halfway through an episode. What's worse, the editing formula rarely changed. A dramatic voiceover, a slow zoom on a concerned face, and then a dramatic cutaway. These cues, once effective, eventually became tropes. It became clear that the show wasn't evolving with its audience. In the golden age of streaming, viewers expect tighter pacing and more varied content. Mountain Men couldn't do both. A show that once felt raw and unexpected slowly became background noise. The stakes felt low not because the challenges weren't real, but because they were told in the same way too many times. Predictability is the enemy of compelling television, especially when you're promising the edge of survival. When Mountain Men launched, it owned its niche. There weren't many shows delivering slow, suspenseful slices of wilderness living. But by the late 2010s, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram exploded with independent survivalists and homesteaders documenting their lives often with more transparency, charisma, and creativity. These creators filmed themselves building shelters from scratch, fishing with handmade tools, or cooking rabbit stew over open fires, and they did it without dramatic voiceovers or overly edited music. More importantly, they responded to comments, shared failures, and filmed in real time. It was less polished, but far more engaging. As a result, Mountain Men began to look dated. In a world where young YouTubers are filming survival challenges on GoPros and getting millions of views overnight, a heavily edited cable series feels slow and overly curated. The raw, spontaneous energy that once made the show so different now existed in abundance online for free. Streaming platforms also introduced wilderness fiction that looked better and moved faster. Shows like Alone, Survivorman, and even dramatized survival thrillers took viewers deeper into the woods, both emotionally and visually. By comparison, Mountain Men's format, cast, and storytelling stayed frozen in place. At its heart, Mountain Men portrayed rugged survivalism, hunting, trapping, and living off-grid. But as environmental consciousness grew in the 2010s and 2020s, so did scrutiny. Viewers began asking, what message is the show really sending? While Mountain Men presented itself as a homage to nature, it rarely engaged with actual environmental issues. Forest fires, endangered species, indigenous land concerns, and even climate change were all largely absent from its narrative. It clung to the image of the noble loner in harmony with nature, but skipped the part where ecosystems were in crisis. That disconnect became hard to ignore. Audiences evolved. Nature shows like Our Planet and The Territory began highlighting the urgent need for environmental action, not just admiration. Younger viewers especially wanted more than scenic backdrops. They wanted accountability, education, and impact. Meanwhile, mountain men kept peddling frontier mythos as if the stakes were still personal, not planetary. The irony was clear that the very wilderness these men depended on was under threat, yet the show never acknowledged it. That silence started to feel tone-deaf, like celebrating a campfire while the forest burns behind you. And for many viewers, that lack of awareness or advocacy made the show feel not just outdated, but irresponsible. What was once a gritty, down-to-earth docuseries about survival quietly transformed into something more commercial, and not in a good way. Somewhere between season 4 and 7, Mountain Men stopped just being a TV show and started becoming a brand, and that shift did real damage. Viewers started seeing it in subtle ways with branded mugs, t-shirts, and hunting knives with cast members' names etched into the blade. Social media accounts started promoting merchandise drops instead of wilderness tips. Suddenly, Tom Orr wasn't just a mountain man, he was a product line. The once authentic veneer of the show began to peel. This isn't new in reality TV, but for mountain men, it was off-brand. Fans weren't tuning in for flashy logos or e-commerce tie-ins, they were drawn to the rejection of modern consumerism. But the more the show leaned into marketing, the more it undercut its own message. To the fans' dismay, the merchandise wasn't even integrated cleverly. It didn't deepen the storytelling or feel part of the lifestyle, it just felt tacked on. And for a show rooted in simplicity and authenticity, selling out literally shattered the illusion. In the end, when the survivalist lifestyle started looking like a side hustle for cable-friendly capitalism, fans started walking. Mountain Men couldn't stay wild while becoming a storefront, and viewers could see right through it. A key ingredient in Mountain Men's early success was its cast. These weren't actors, they were fascinating individuals who happened to be living extraordinary lives. Tom Orr, a former rodeo cowboy living in Montana's Yaak Valley, became the emotional core of the series. He tanned hides, built his own tools, and lived a frontier life so removed from modernity, it felt like time travel. Fans loved him. But as the show grew and the grind of filming increased, Tom began to step back. Reports suggest he was considering retirement, not just from the show but from the mountain life altogether due to his and his wife Nancy's age and health concerns. By season 10, Tom's appearances were infrequent, and by season 11, he was gone. Quietly, respectfully, and heartbreakingly. Then came Marty Maiorato, the Alaskan trapper who flew his own bush plane into the deep wilderness. Marty was a fan favorite for his high-stakes lifestyle, checking traps alone in sub-zero temperatures with no safety net but himself. But in 2019, he stepped away, citing family as the reason. He wanted to spend more time with his daughter, a choice that was widely respected but still deeply felt. Eustace Conway, arguably the most eccentric and cerebral of the original trio, didn't formally exit, but his presence became erratic. Some speculate it was due to legal issues around land use at his Turtle Island preserve. Others cite contract disputes or creative differences. Whatever the reason, Eustace became less central, and the show felt it. As these originals stepped away, History Channel introduced new faces, but they lacked the deep familiarity that came with watching Tom and Marty over a decade. When OG cast members left, the stakes evaporated. It no longer felt like watching old friends survive another brutal winter. It felt like watching hired replacements reenact it. And that is what really made Mountain Men fall off. The people were the magic, and once they walked away, the spell broke.